Well, hello there. Welcome to the 9th episode of the War, Sports, Politics, and Dragons podcast. I am Dave, the Emperor of the Nerds, and as always, I am going to be your host today. Thanks for coming on board. Really do appreciate it, guys. It means a lot to have you listening. Excuse me, sorry. We're growing. Please spread the word. Help me increase my numbers to qualify for a sponsor. We're not just on Spotify where we got our start anymore. We're on Amazon. We're on Audible. We're on iHeartRadio and others. More coming soon. We're on Twitter at the WSPD Podcast. We're on YouTube at the WSPD Podcast. We're on Instagram at the WSPD Pod. And I've got an update about possible Instagram pictures because I love taking photographs, but have not been able to get out of the house. We're a one-car household. The wife uses it for work. So in the daytime, while she's at her job and I'm here, I can't get out of the house to go take photos. And there's only so many photos you can take of your house and surroundings that would be interesting. So anyway, we'll get to that later on. On Patreon, have not got everything set up yet. Again, we're waiting on a certain couple of things to happen so that we can. But patreon.com/WSPDragons is a work in progress. If you want to help us improve our tech, and we actually have a benefactor I'm not going to name, but it is a listener who is going to be helping us by getting us, sending us a laptop to use that's way better than the little beat-up 5-year-old $100 Chromebook that I have that only has 26 gigs of hard drive space, 14 of which is used for system software. I really can't install anything on it because it doesn't have the processor speed to do anything with it. So software for making good videos and things like that just aren't an option on this Chromebook. Basically it's... what is it? What's the best way to describe it? It's basically just an internet browser and a word processor, and it doesn't really have much other use. I've got a manuscript on it that I'm almost finished, and I want to thank a friend of mine, you know who you are, who in a brainstorming session I had with him yesterday. I have this novel I've been working on since I started it in August of 2021. So when you talk about the creative process and people are like, well, how hard is it to write a book? Well, this one has taken 5 years because I've actually dealt with 4 years of writer's block due to various life events and my deteriorating health and a lot of other stuff going on. But I started this manuscript in August of 2021, and I can proudly tell you that assuming we have electricity, and we'll get to possible reason why we might not have it next week shortly, if we keep our electricity, basically there's a winter storm coming and I'll fill you in. If we keep our electricity, I am very optimistic that I will have this manuscript done by this time next week. In 1 week, I should have this manuscript done. And to put that into proper context, it's over 100,000 words, and it's a novel, so it's fictional. It's set in the 1990s here on Maryland's Eastern Shore. It's about a guy and a girl that fall in love, and all manner of hilarity and crazy stuff ensue afterward. And I've got a couple people who have been beta reading it that have all said they've enjoyed it. They have helped me with some minor tweaks and suggestions, and one suggestion that I got from a friend yesterday clicked on a light bulb in my head, and I figured out a way to actually end the novel in a manner that seems to do it justice. So I'm happy for that. Also, you're going to hear some background noise, and the reason is it's colder than a well digger's butt in this house again, and I'm not going to catch another cold from it. So I have a couple of heaters running in this bedroom, and I am not turning them off. Okay, this bedroom is my office, so I'm not turning those suckers off. I apologize for the background noise, but it's going to be a necessary thing for this podcast and the next couple, because we've got an Arctic blast coming that looks like it's going to last a full week, and it's going to blow its way into town starting tonight. It's not going to clear until at least next weekend. All right, but to get everything underway, we're starting with some quick news headlines. I'm just going to debunk a quick fallacy that the left is spreading about ICE detaining a 5-year-old child. We've all heard about this. In Minnesota, a 5-year-old boy was supposedly arrested by ICE. No, here's what's actually happened is his illegal immigrant criminal father. And when I say illegal immigrant criminal, that sounds kind of redundant because anyone with common sense knows that if you immigrate to a country illegally, that in and of itself is a crime. In America, it's Section 8 of the U.S. Code, subsection 1325, which clearly states that it is a violation of the law to immigrate here illegally. 8 U.S. Code 1324 makes it a crime to help someone come to this country illegally. So in my humble opinion, every Democrat politician in this country is complicit in violating 8 U.S.C. 1324. But as we all know, in politics, very few of the elected, of the selected, of the elite go to jail. So it's just us common folks. It's a big club, like George Carlin said, and you ain't in it. Okay? But anyway, the 5-year-old boy fallacy. His father abandoned him as he fled from ICE. Okay? And they had no choice but to take the child into basically protective custody. But the left is framing it as, they're arresting 5-year-olds. You know what? I got to level with you on something here. If you think that cutting up babies and selling their parts is okay just because they haven't been born yet, and you believe that it's okay to carry a baby to full term and then yank it out of its mother's body and cut it up and kill it on what could be the day it could be born, full-term abortion, which is still available in 14 states, by the way. If you're in favor of that, I got to level with you. I don't want to hear any of your shit about the sanctity of life. Okay? You just failed that basic argument from the jump. You just don't have any standing. Okay? I don't accept suggestions on how to hold a happy Hanukkah from Hitler. And I don't listen to liberals who believe in abortion telling me that somebody's life is sacred. Because they don't believe that crap. Okay? And next month, when it's Girl Scout cookie season, we'll be talking about why you don't buy Girl Scout cookies anymore. Okay? We'll point that out in February when the time approaches. Okay? Of course, scouting has imploded anyway, since they don't bother differentiating between boys and girls and Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts anymore, even though it's right in the name. But, that's too hard for some people. Makes their think muscle hurt. In political and world news, sad news, basically what I'm hearing from Iran is that the unrest there, the pro-democracy protests, have pretty much ceased because of the brutal crackdown by the scumbag Islamofascist regime there, which now has confirmed that it has murdered over 5,000 of its own citizens, including 40 children, give or take, and around 40 people who weren't even protesting, just because they happened by. But, Immigration and Customs Enforcement goes knocking on a door with an arrest warrant for somebody who's here illegally and is molesting children, and the Democrats rise up to defend that. And the Democrats are utterly silent on Iran. Let's not forget this. The Democrats have not done diddly squat about Iran. They've not said a word. You don't hear anything from them about it, except suddenly an article has appeared on MS Now, which used to be called MSNBC, but it's such a toxic TV network that Comcast has split it off from the rest of the channels in an attempt to sell it to some schmuck who hopefully will unscrew this screwed up network. Suddenly, MS Now has run an article, and let me dig around here real quick and find it. You're going to laugh at the convenient timing of this, because all of a sudden how Iran treats homosexuals matters. Okay, remember, crickets is all you hear about how Iran treats anybody. And, hold on, I'm trying to type it into a search engine. And had a typo. Oh, man, I tell you what, I did hear recently that iPhones, I think it's iPhones, are programmed with a glitch that will actually intentionally misinterpret your keystrokes when you're typing stuff. So it's not you, folks. If you're typing on an iPhone and the typos just seem egregious and you're watching yourself type a T and a Y shows up, it's because the programming's screwed up. Here it is. Okay, from MSLSD. I'm sorry, MSDNC. No, I'm sorry, MS Now. From the Mad Cow channel. Headline: Trump administration plans to deport 40 Iranians days after mass killings in Iran. Suddenly they care about what's happening in Iran. Wow. Because we're deporting people there. Wow. Suddenly the situation in Iran matters. Here's the subheader of the story. 2 of the deportees are gay and are terrified of returning to a country where homosexuality is punishable by death, their lawyer says. Oh. Suddenly the fact that the Iranian government and various people there throw gay people off rooftops and hang them from construction cranes by the neck until dead, suddenly this is a concern. They didn't give a crap about it 6 weeks ago. They didn't care at all about it a month back, a year back, 10 years back, 30 years back, 40 years back, 45 years back, after the Islamofascists took over in 1979. Okay, this isn't a recent development. It's not like they just started doing this last Tuesday. Okay? This is something that the Iranian Islamofascist regime has been doing for decades in compliance with their mentally screwed up 7th century Islamist manner of thinking. Okay, they treat women like property, they treat gays like anathema and stone them to death and burn them alive and drown them while they, put them in cages and put the cages underwater and drown them. They, like I said, hang them from construction cranes. They throw them off of rooftops. So when you hear about Queers for Palestine, Palestinians have seen videos of it. The videos are out there, guys. I don't need to lie or embellish. The facts speak for themselves. Palestinians have approached these people and said, we don't want you. If you're in Palestine, we would kill you. You don't belong here. That's how they actually treat gays. And the alphabet crowd just doesn't seem to get it. You see people who've converted to Islam because they claim that Islam is so great towards LGBTQAITIEIO people. No, it's a bunch of crap. You're deluded and you're stupid. But, I mean, when you say that to somebody on the political left, it's like saying the sky is blue because you're pointing out the blatantly obvious. Okay? Liberalism is a freaking mental disease. I'm not going to read this article because it's pathetic in its timing. Okay? You don't want to see people treated like this. But they didn't say a damn word about it until just now. Because they're on the ISIS bad bandwagon when under Barack Hussein, the light giver, the Nobel Peace Prize winner after just 11 days in office, which basically turned the Nobel Peace Prize into a participation trophy. When he was the president, he deported millions upon millions of people. The number I want to say is 12 million, but that might be high. And nobody batted an eyelash on the left about him being what was called then, they called him then the deporter-in-chief. Not a word was said, not a word uttered. Crickets again from the left. But now that ICE is doing the same thing under Trump, and it's actually on a smaller scale, the left has decided, oh no, this is evil, this is terrible. The problem is the same friggin' guy, Tom Homan, is running ICE, who ran ICE under Barack Obama. So what's changed? The party in charge has changed. Therefore, the outrage is now existent, whereas it wasn't before. They had no problem funding ICE in 2000, in 2001, in 2002, in 2003, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Oh, no. Now there's a problem with ICE in 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20. Oh, no, because Bad Orange Man's in charge. Fast forward to 2021. They're funding ICE, they're funding ICE, they're funding ICE, they're funding ICE for the next 4 years. Oh, no, and then Bad Orange Man's back in the White House again. We can't fund ICE. They're terrible. Whatever, dude. Okay? Make sure you wash your ass because you're blowing a lot of stuff out of it. Here endeth that particular rant. Moving on. New Greenland deal is, the framework of it has been announced, and we won't go into great detail because, again, it's just a framework and some of it could be turned down. But basically, the long and the short of it is Trump issued some crazy ultimatums over Greenland, and I'm going to tell a life story from my childhood about how what Trump is doing works like a charm in so many instances. Basically, what he did was he over-asked. He said, I want Greenland, I want to buy Greenland, I want it to become American territory. And of course, the Danes are up in arms because I guess the Danes never had to fight and lose colonial wars to maintain an empire, so they're trying to do the same crap that led to a lot of bad blood between countries around the world and European nations like England, France, Spain, and Portugal, and to a lesser extent Germany, by trying to hold on to a worldwide empire of sorts, even though Denmark's only real possessions are a few islands plus Greenland in the Atlantic. At one point they controlled Iceland. It became an independent country. And Greenland is a semi-autonomous kind of sort of possession of Denmark. It'd take too long on this podcast for me to explain the intricacies there. But it is to Denmark kind of what Guam and the Northern Marianas Islands are. I guess Northern Marianas would be a good example, to the United States. It's a possession of the U.S., but they're kind of on their own. However, of course, Guam is represented kind of sort of in Congress. I think it's part of, is it the 12th California Congressional District, which was represented by Nancy Pelosi, another god-awful left-wing scumbag ideologue, who fought to oppose minimum wage laws affecting her district, which included Guam, because her buddies at Bumblebee and Starkist Tuna have major tuna packaging facilities on Guam, and the minimum wage laws would have driven up costs for people that give her tons of bribe and other money. But anyway, back to the original thought, the Greenland deal. Basically, the long and the short of what the framework is, and again, Denmark might not go along with all of it, but it looks as if Trump has a deal similar to what's going on in Cyprus with British military bases. Cyprus, an island, it's in the eastern Mediterranean. It's shaped kind of like a turkey leg laying on its side. It's south of Turkey. It's west of Lebanon, in the very eastern part of the Mediterranean, and was a bone of contention between the Turks and the Greeks for quite some time, and may still be. The British have bases there that are essentially British sovereign territory. And what the deal for Greenland is looking like is America may end up with the rights to do something remarkably similar in Greenland. Set up American military bases. Now, granted, Greenland is an absolutely frozen frickin' wasteland for most of its territory. Almost all of its territory is just frozen tundra. You can joke about Lambeau Field in Green Bay, Wisconsin, where the Packers play, as the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field. This is truly a frozen tundra. It is a frickin' moonscape. But under it is a lot of rare earth minerals and oil. Not a ton of oil, but there's oil and gold and other things there in Greenland, beneath the surface, beneath the ice and the rock. There's all kinds of stuff being found, including a bunch of World War II era P-38 Lightning aircraft that got found a few years ago and dug out of the ice. But anyway, that's just trivia. So basically, the deal might give America access to the rare earth minerals, the oil, the gold, etc., and basically autonomous American territory popping up in the form of bases if the U.S. military forms bases there. I did see a map of Greenland, and in extremely northern Greenland, it looked like there was a Space Force base. Now, I don't know if that is in existence or if that is projected. I don't know a lot about our military assets on the world's largest island. That's not a continent. But I saw it there, and I'll have to look into that a little bit more. And these two concessions alone are huge, because in addition to all that, yeah, Denmark is going to keep Greenland, and then Denmark gets to keep subsidizing the population of Greenland. They're paying the population of Greenland in different subsidies and whatever, 500 million American dollars, the equivalent of that, every year. So it's saving America a fortune, and also NATO is agreeing, by the look of it, to have decided to not let non-member countries do anything with Greenland and access the territory there. And when I say NATO, non-NATO member countries, I'm talking specifically about Russia and China, which is a huge countermove to Putin and a huge countermove to China. Both are becoming more and more aggressive and belligerent, and thank God we have a strong alpha male type in the White House, because with, Captain Ice Cream putting in a nap Joe Biden there, the Europeans like Joe Biden because they could walk all over him because he was weak and not very bright. Okay? Europeans love when America has a weak leader, because they can push him around and he'll just bend the knee and do whatever the hell they say. Trump isn't like that. Trump's a loose cannon. And yeah, some of the crap he says can be downright unhinged. I will gladly admit to that. But there is a method somewhere in most of his madness. Some of it doesn't make sense. But, Joe Biden was incoherent for most of his 4 years in the White House. And we won't even discuss that one presidential debate in June of 2024. Okay? No amount of Kool-Aid in the world would wash away how absolutely much like a blithering idiot he looked. How utterly senile, decrepit, and useless as a chief executive he looked in the one debate he had with Donald Trump in 2024. So when you have a stronger American leader, you get a better American foreign deals. And for Trump to have possibly finagled, and again, it's still not finalized, but the fact that there's a framework for this means that it's possible, if not likely. A deal for rare earth minerals, oil, and gold for us to, and by us I mean America, to have access to that, to have the ability to put military bases there, and for Russia and China to be barred from going there. That's massive. That's massive. But we'll move on. And I've got to get to a hilarious post on Twix by the account that calls itself Blue Lives Matter. I'm not going to read you the whole thing, just the guts of it. And you'll get a big kick out of it. And then we're going to do a couple of other things. This got posted, I want to say earlier this morning on Twix. Stop what you're doing. We have a pretty huge update and confession about the whole, quote, report ICE activity hotline situation. By about 1 a.m., we had reports come in from numerous states that there had been incidents at a number of biker bars last night. It turns out that report ICE activity hotlines had received tips about off-duty ICE agents, quote-unquote, drinking at dozens of bars. Well, these bars just so happen to be biker bars owned or frequented by individuals who haven't always been on the right side of the law. ICE protesters were alerted and given the addresses of these bars. According to friends of ours around the country, Beta Soy Boy Gender Fluid Communist Meal Team Sixers showed up with their F-ICE flags and tried barging into the bars, except there were no ICE agents drinking there, and as a wise man once said, and I think this is a quote of Chaz Palminteri from the movie A Bronx Tale, now yous can leave. Now yous can't leave. To clarify, sorry, this is just making me laugh. To clarify, we absolutely did not report. We absolutely did not report those addresses to the report ICE activity hotlines. That's ridiculous, guys. What kind of people do you think you are? Do you think we are? Now, we simply provided the hotlines to the good old boys that drink at those bars and asked them if they wanted to have a fun night. Hey, leftists, we've been warning you. So, it may or may not be true, but either way, it's hilarious. And I got a couple of other things that are also funny, some that are funnier, that I'm going to tell when we get to joke time. But we're going to do sad facts next. And starting with one from another account on Twix called I Am Yes, You Are No. The U.S. has the third highest murder rate. However, if you remove Chicago, Detroit, Washington, D.C., St. Louis, and Philadelphia, that's 5 cities, and they're not even all 5 of the largest cities. Okay? Because D.C. has a population of 600,000. That's not even top 20. If you take out Chicago, Detroit, Washington, St. Louis, and Philadelphia, the U.S. would rank 5th from the bottom, meaning 5th best overall in murder rate worldwide. Quick question for you, as the Twitter account asks, what do all these cities have in common? I don't know. Another sad fact, legally speaking in California, if you're under 18, you can get a sex change but you are not allowed to use a tanning bed. Yeah. If Gavin Newsom was any stupider, he'd have to be watered once a day. Just utterly ridiculous. And our final sad fact for the day comes from one of our listeners. Rifles were involved in 297 deaths last year. Constipation killed 2,167 people. So being full of crap like liberals kills more people than guns. But we'll move on. Going into role-playing news and nerd stuff, we're not talking about role-playing, we're talking about trading card games, collectible card games, TCGs and CCGs. We're talking about Magic the Gathering, which I personally have been playing off and on, now more off than on, because from about 1997 until 2022, I did not play. But the game stayed in existence for all those years. It came out, I want to say, in 1993 with the Alpha set. Then the Beta set came out. Then Unlimited came out. Then I think Arabian Nights came out. Then Revised came out. Then Legends came out. Then The Dark came out. Then Fallen Empires came out. And basically now Wizards of the Coast, which owns them, Richard Garfield founded the company. He's, I believe, the inventor of Magic the Gathering. They're putting out a new set of cards that you can plug into your decks of cards and play about every 2.5 months. The latest set is something called Lorwyn Eclipsed, and based on the cards I've looked at, because I've looked at almost the whole set of cards online, and when you play on the Magic Arena app, you can get more cards by winning games against actual human opponents. There is a bot you can play named Sparky, and I routinely clean his clock, except when suddenly I don't get any land to use to draw the power from to cast the spells in the deck. And basically, the premise of the game is there are 5 different types of power sources based on color. There's green, red, white, blue, and black. And there are forests give you green power, islands give you blue, mountains give you red, plains give you white, and swamps give you black magical power. You then use those different mana sources, as they're called, to pay the cost to cast the spells on other cards, to summon creatures, or do effects with spells, or sling fireballs and lightning bolts, or whatever the case may be, in an effort to reduce your opponent from 20 points of health down to 0, because when you knock your opponent to 0, or if they run out of cards, when you knock your opponent down to 0, you win the game. And competitive decks that you play against one another have to be 60 cards. There are a few cases where they're 40, and there are a few cases where they're 80 or 100, but primarily the benchmark is you need a minimum 60 card deck to play competitively on the Magic Arena app. That's the rule of thumb. There are a lot of exceptions. But put together a 60-card deck and you play against another one. I've got a green deck that I use right now, and I've had a lot of fun with it. I call it Raging Roids because of what some of the cards in it do. But looking at the Lorwyn Eclipse set from the new release from Magic, I got to tell you, I'm a little underwhelmed. I'm not really liking the set. There are a couple of cards. There's one card, I forget the first word of it, but it's something Colossus. It's a white giant that has a strength of 7 and a toughness of 7, so it can inflict 7 points of damage when it attacks, and it can absorb 6 before it dies, because if it absorbs 7, it dies. And it has a cool effect where basically once it appears, every creature the opponent has turns into a coward and loses a lot of strength and loses all their abilities, and this creature is a game-changing type creature. But there are very few truly powerful cards, in my opinion, in it, and there are a lot of cards that involve trade-offs, whereupon if you penalize one of your own creatures, you can make another one stronger. But again, there's too much of a trade-off. And the cards, compared to other cards that I've got and that I've seen and that have come out over the years in other decks, the Lorwyn Eclipse set seems a little underpowered. It just seems like the cards aren't, pound for pound, as potent as cards from a lot of other sets. Before this one, the release before it was actually Avatar: The Last Airbender. And I'm not a fan of that cartoon. I'm not a fan of hardly any cartoon that's come out in the last 35 years. But the set has some particularly potent cards, and I use a significant number of them in my decks right now. There are a couple of green cards in my green deck from Avatar, and I have had a total of one card from Lorwyn Eclipsed that I use. It's called the Surly Farrier, and basically what it does is it gives a +1 strength bonus to another creature for one turn of play. Okay, because the way it is you have a turn, then your opponent takes a turn, then you take a turn, your opponent takes a turn, and now there are the possibility of playing cards during your opponent's turn, but really 2/3 of what you do at least happens on your turn. There are a lot of responsive action cards that you can play on your opponent's turn, but in my experience, around 2/3 of what you do happens on your turn. So there's only one. That's the only card so far, that and the Colossus, that I've put in any of my decks to play. Whereas from Avatar, I routinely have 2 or 3 that I use just in green decks. Okay, so I use more green cards from Avatar than I use total cards from Lorwyn. Now, granted, my experience with Lorwyn is a lot more limited because it just got released Tuesday to the general public 3 days ago. There had been pre-releases and stuff like that, and if you have money to spend, you could have bought stuff earlier, and there are already people who have entire Lorwyn Eclipse decks, and that's all well and good. If you want to base your whole deck on a new set, yeah, I imagine in the aggregate you're going to have enough cards where you can have a pretty decent deck that way, but I really like the variety of pulling from multiple different iterations of the game to do it. And there are several formats in the app that allow you, like one of them you can pull from 7 or 8 most recent card issuances. And then there's another one that goes back a few years, and then another one that goes back even longer, and then another one called Timeless that takes you way back, almost basically to the beginnings of the app, and for years possibly behind that. I like playing Timeless, but when you play Timeless, you're running into some really powerful stuff, some really potent decks from the past, and some of these people, and that's fine because it's a hobby and there's money involved and people will spend money on a hobby, but there are some people who throw all their discretionary income into their decks playing on Magic Arena, and I'm not one of those people. I have a budget for hobbies of $0. So if I can't play an app for free, I don't play the app. And this is a prime example of it. But you can win coins by playing against other players, and you can use the coins to buy more packs of cards, and then, it rinse and repeat. That's how you can expand your card library and add stuff to your deck. Plus, it seems like whenever there's a new issuance comes out, Wizards will throw you 3 packs of cards just as an inducement. And so I had enough coins saved up for about 15 packs of cards from Lorwyn, so I spent those coins and then got 3 free packs. So I've got about 12.5 packs of cards, so I've pulled over 100 cards from this set, which has, I want to say, over 300 in it. But what I've seen so far, even looking at the rare cards and the mythic rare cards, which are, the best of the best, it just doesn't really do it for me. The Lorwyn Eclipse set, I think, is undergunned, as they say, and I'm not a fan, so maybe the next issuance will have better stuff in it. But in the meantime, enjoy playing. I do. I'm not telling you my username. You'll just have to wonder who I am. Okay, now it's joke time. I got a couple of good ones here. First, we start with Jim. Jim was a man who used to frequent bars a lot, and in his early 60s, one night he went to a bar, came home a little bit drunk, and his wife had already gone to sleep. She didn't wait up for him because she was used to what he did. Jim comes home, crashes out in bed, goes to sleep. Well, when he wakes up, he learns that he's died and he's in heaven. And he looks at St. Peter and he's like, I can't be here. I got to go back. There's so much unfinished business that I need to tend to. I got to tie up loose ends. I've got things I've got to do with and for my wife. I've got kids. I've got family. I've got business ventures. I've got stuff going on. Please send me back. Please send me back. Well, St. Peter says, we can't send you back as Jim. But I tell you what we can do is we can send you back as a chicken. And Jim says, will I be anywhere near my wife? I don't know about that. But I can tell you that we can send you back as a chicken. It's the best we can do right now. We just can't send you back as Jim. That's not the way things work. We can reincarnate you as a chicken. He says, okay, fine. I'll figure out a way to get out of the chicken coop and I'll find my way to my wife. I'll figure out a way to communicate. I can make it work. I'll get back. Well, boom. In a flash of light, the next thing he knows, he's a hen in a hen house, cooped up on a farm. And suddenly, within a minute of arriving there, Jim feels this ungodly pressure and bloating in his chicken stomach. Oh, what is that? Oh, it feels awful. Well, writhing in pain, a rooster happens by, looks at Jim and says, hey, girl, what's wrong? And Jim says, I don't know, I just got this terrible feeling in my guts like I'm going to explode. And the rooster says, well, you're going to lay an egg. You've got to lay an egg. That's what you do. Have you never laid an egg before? Well, Jim doesn't say anything and then just says, okay, I guess I got to lay an egg. And then, tries to figure out which muscles do it and pushes and grunts and strains. And the next thing you know, boop, an egg pops out. Well, apparently there's more than one because Jim's still feeling that pressure and that bloating. It's not quite so bad, but it's getting worse. And Jim pushes and grunts and strains again, and boop, out comes another egg. Well, at that point, his wife wakes him up. He was dreaming. Jim, you've pooped in the bed. Our next story is a hypothetical scenario revolving around failed presidential candidate, thank God, Hillary Clinton. Hillary's elected president. And one night as she's walking through the White House, she's greeted by the ghost of George Washington. And she looks at George Washington and says, George, because apparently this bitch is on first name basis with our founding fathers, but we won't get into that. That's how the joke was told to me. George, what can I do to make America better? George Washington says to Hillary Clinton, you can make America better by not telling a lie. Never tell a lie. Well, Hillary says, I don't know if I can do that. The next night, she's visited by the ghost of Thomas Jefferson. And she says, Thomas, what can I do to make America better and to serve the country better? He says, you have to work for the people. You have to serve the people and not your own interests. She says, I don't know if I can do that. Well, the next night, she's visited by the ghost of our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln. Number 1, George Washington, and number 3, Thomas Jefferson, have already come by. These are, by the way, 3 of the 4 men on Mount Rushmore. If you can name the 4th one, you win free oxygen for life. Or win free air for life, I'll just say that much. Because I don't have oxygen to give away. Abraham Lincoln visits Hillary Clinton, and she says, Abe, what can I do to make the country better and to better serve the country? And Abe Lincoln looks at her, thinks about it, and says, why don't you go see a play? Moving on to our final joke from Joke Time. And I was about to write a 4th one down, but in the time it took me to open up my notes app to write it down, I forgot the joke. But joke number 3, our final joke. And then we're doing anecdotal evidence, and we're going to wrap things up. But actually, we're doing anecdotal evidence, and then we're going to be doing sports, because I've got to make a couple of NFL picks. Apparently, there's a game or 2 coming on Sunday afternoon. Our final joke is about Bubba. Bubba was the star player on the local football team. And, well, he wasn't doing well in school. It was a high school football team, and Bubba is flunking English. But his grade is not terribly low below the pass-fail level. He can pass English just in time for grade check, and he can stay on the team if he passes the next test. And the football coach goes to the English teacher and explains the situation to the English teacher. Well, he's in luck because the English teacher is a football fan and loves the high school team and is, a good supporter of the program. And the coach impresses upon the English teacher, please make the test easy so that Bubba can pass it, because we got to have him for the big game. You know, if we win this game, we're in the playoffs. And the teacher says, all right, I'll see what I can do. Well, the next day after class, the teacher says to Bubba, Bubba, you've got to take this test, but if you pass it, you're going to get an A. If you get this one question right, you get an A, you're going to pass English, and you can play in the big game tomorrow night. Okay, coach, Bubba says to the English teacher. Bubba, again, all you got to do is get this question right. It's a one-question oral quiz. Here it comes. You ready? I need you to spell the word coffee. Coffee? You know, the stuff you drink or your dad drinks. Coffee, like to drink. Yeah, okay. Yeah, what do I have to do? You have to spell the word coffee. But I tell you what, in the interest of making it a little easier for you, you only have to get one letter right. Okay, Bubba? Okay, coach. Now, Bubba, I need you to spell the word coffee. And again, you only got to get one letter right, and you pass, and you get to play in the big game tomorrow night. And Bubba looks at the coach, or at the teacher, and says proudly, coffee! Kawphy! Coffee! And that concludes joke time for the day. I hope you enjoyed it. Now we're going to go to anecdotal evidence, and again, because it is a treasure trove of stories, the Quick Shop that I worked at in 1987. Doc's Quick Shop, small local chain of 7 or 8 stores. The headquarters was Easton, Maryland. I was working in the Cambridge, Maryland store, which was right off westbound 50. And again, as I tell you every time when I preface these stories, it was a Shell station that was a convenience store. Now it is a Rise Up coffee shop. And amazingly, they're open till supper time. I don't know who the hell's drinking coffee at 7 p.m., but anyway, they're there, and I don't drink coffee, so I can't tell you whether or not the stuff they sell is any good. Sorry, can't help you there. But I am reliably informed that they have decent pastries. Anyway, the day I cost Doc's Quick Shop the state police gas station contract. So it's a weekday. It's in the evening. It's getting on about dark, and I was working probably like 4 to 9 p.m. or something like that. Because I would get off school at 3:25. That would give me enough time to go to my dad's house, change clothes, put on my work clothes, which usually didn't involve anything more than throwing on a smock, because I wore a dress shirt, slacks, and a tie to school a lot when I was a junior and senior in high school. I don't know why. It's just how I was. I wouldn't call it preppy. I don't know what the hell it was, but I basically would wear a button-down shirt, a necktie, and khaki pants or blue jeans and tennis shoes to school. So anyway, I go to work, working 4 to 9, and it's getting about 8 o'clock. So we're getting along in the evening. I think the store closed on weeknights at 11. And a state police cruiser pulls into the parking lot. And I was outside dumping the garbage can by the front door. And this is a quick story. I was out dumping the garbage can by the front door. Well, the trooper gets out of the car and yells over to me. Now, mind you, this is 1987. Gas pumps as we know them now, almost all of them will accept credit cards. Back then, none of them did. In order to use a credit card back then, you had to put it in this little plastic device that had a slide bar. You put a piece of carbon paper underneath it to make a copy of the card to attach to, and the carbon paper had a receipt where the card image, quote unquote, would be pushed through the carbon paper and leave an imprint, and that's how the receipt was created for a purchase using a credit card back in the 1980s. It was the old slide thing. Some of you listeners might not know what the heck I'm talking about, but look it up. How were credit cards handled in 1987? By and large, it was this little plastic device that had a slide bar that made an imprint of the credit card on carbon paper, and the carbon paper had a built-in receipt on one side, and that's how it worked. Well, I'm out there, and I'm not paying the cop any attention because I'm trying to dump the trash. And dumping trash at a convenience store, man, people throw some of the wackiest, nastiest crap in what's essentially a public garbage can. I don't know what it is. I don't know why. But they will throw some of the nastiest mess in there. And there was the rare occasion when I had to hose out the garbage cans, and that's a story in and of itself. Because something happened then too. But I'm trying to get this done, so I'm not paying him any mind. I'm trying not to get yuck, garbage can juice on my clothing as I'm dumping this thing. And then I hear this voice behind me, this authoritative masculine voice. Hey, you, young man, you. Hey. I turn around and it's the cop. He's at the pump and he didn't come in to pay, and there's no pay at the pump option at this point. Again, it's 1987. He yells out, "Do you take State of Maryland credit cards?" I said, "State of Maryland credit cards?" He says, "Yeah, do you guys take State of Maryland credit cards?" Well, I'm 16 years old. I know virtually nothing about credit cards. I've heard of Visa. I've heard of MasterCharge, which changed its name to MasterCard. And I've heard of American Express. And I think Discover was fairly new still at that point. And Discover wasn't widely accepted at that point. It was really just Visa, MC, and occasionally Amex was all that we took. Well, I had never heard of a State of Maryland credit card. What the hell is a State of Maryland credit card? I mean, there were gas station credit cards, because you could have a Shell credit card or an Exxon credit card, and we were a Shell station. So I looked at him and I was like, "No, I don't think we do, actually." And of course, after I said it, I realized I had seen state troopers come to the store before and produce some manner of plastic that they would give the clerk to fuel their cruiser. And, I didn't think anything more about it. Well, he gets in his patrol vehicle and leaves because he can't get gas there. Right? Well, a couple days later, I'm working. And Carol Ann, the manager, comes up to me and says, "Hey, David, did you talk to a state trooper the other night?" And I thought about it, and I was like, "Well, I didn't talk to him. He asked me a question." She says, "Well, did you answer it?" I said, "Yeah, I answered it. I mean, I didn't ignore him, but we didn't really have much of a conversation. If that's what you mean." She says, No. You understand what I'm trying to talk about here. Because we got a call from the Easton State Police Barracks, and we're just trying to clear something up because it might cost us a lot of money if we don't get it cleared up. I was like, "Okay, what?" Well, apparently the trooper asked a kid that works here, and you're the only person here who's under 21, if the store accepted State of Maryland credit cards, and the kid told him no. I said, "Do we accept State of Maryland credit cards?" She said, "Yeah, we accept State of Maryland credit cards. What it is it's a shell card that simply has the State of Maryland as the account holder on it." I said, Oh, okay. She says, "So now the state police are kind of pissed off at us because, they think that somebody here lied and refused them business." I said, "Well, no, I didn't lie. I just didn't know any better, and I'm sorry. I'm really sorry about that. Now that I know, though, if anyone asks, I'll have the right answer for them." She said, "Okay, that's good, because that's really what I wanted, and we'll get it all worked out. But please, if you don't know something about store policy from now on, you gotta ask. Don't ever assume, because if you assume, and this is the first time I ever heard this phrase, if you assume, as the word shows you, you make an ass out of you and me." I said, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's cool." So I almost cost my chain of convenience stores all of the business from the state of Maryland. And of course, we're located in Maryland. So, that could have been a chunk of change. It was probably more than I made in a week. So I basically doubled the cost of them employing me almost by making a simple mistake. The moral of the story is, for one thing, don't hire me at your quick shop, because I'm a bumbling idiot, apparently. The second moral of the story is, if you don't know something, try to find it out. And this is a recurring theme with Americans and our society. People don't know something, so they automatically assume whatever is convenient or fits their personal narrative. I found myself doing this. But in an era where you're carrying around the devices that we're carrying around, these smartphones have access, as I've said before, to so much information. Everything that we've ever come up with is, by and large, available via search engines on internet browsers that are easily accessed on payphones. Not payphones, I'm sorry, on cell phones. Don't be ignorant. Don't not know something. You can find it out. It doesn't take a lot of research. Okay, just from skimming headlines and doing a very little bit of surface level research, I can do enough show prep to fill 4 or 5 hours without getting in-depth knowledge. And that's something that I'm going to be working on too, is because I don't like just being surface level when we talk about stuff. I like diving a little deeper on stuff. And I'm debating whether or not, and I'd like your input on this, I'm debating whether or not we should have fewer things to discuss but go deeper on them. Because you can't hit all your targets, as they say, as Frederick the Great once said, he who defends everything defends nothing. To draw an analogy to that, he who tries to discuss everything discusses nothing. So that may be the direction that we're headed here with the podcast, is that we narrow it to fewer topics, but we're still going to keep war, sports, politics, and dragons, because that's how I like it. Anyway, moving on. So, Jim's a chicken. Hillary Clinton's going to see a play. Bubba can't spell coffee to save his life. And I'm a terrible person to ask when it comes to what credit cards are accepted at the local convenience store. Moving on, we're going to the National Football League and the conference championships, which are essentially the semifinals of the league's playoffs, are Sunday. The first game is the AFC Championship between number 2 New England and number 1 Denver. Denver, of course, being the home team, because I, having worked for 17 years in the newspaper business and sports, always try to list the home team last. So it's at 3 p.m. Sunday. The betting line on it, and again, I don't endorse betting, but I think it's an okay guideline for roughly how the game might unfold point-wise. The betting line for Denver and New England is New England, the visiting team, is a 4.5-point favorite, and the over-under on total points scored is 41.5. So what this means is the bookies think that half the people will bet on either side of these numbers. So New England may be a heavier favorite. Denver may actually be the favorite. We don't know, because that's just how the betting lines work. It's not a predictor, totally accurate predictor of how things go. It's like the Pirates Code. It's more of a suggestion. It's more of a guideline. It's how the bookies make money. But here's the thing. New England being a favorite on the road in a deep playoff game against a team it has never historically beaten on the road in a playoff game is in and of itself significant. And I can point you to exactly one reason. It's 5 letters, it's 2 words. Bo Nix. Bo is the quarterback, was the starting quarterback for the Denver Broncos. And by the way, he has the shortest first and last name combined of, I believe, it's either any quarterback who ever played in the NFL or any player who ever played in the NFL. In Major League Baseball, you have Ed Ott, who's also got a 2-letter first name and a 3-letter last name. But in NFL football, you have Bo Nix. Bo Nix is out with a broken bone in one ankle, which happened in his team's playoff win last week. And over Buffalo. And Garrett Steedham is his backup, who doesn't have exactly, we can't call it a lengthy resume. Okay, he's not a very experienced quarterback. But he is a quarterback who's accustomed to that system, because you have to be if you're going to be the backup. Because the whole point of the backup is to be there if the starter gets hurt. In this case, the starter's hurt. So you got to go with Garrett. And so he's got a lot on him. Of course, another thing about it is, if everybody's picking him to lose, in a manner of speaking, he's kind of playing with the house's money, so he might dial it up, and he might really accomplish something Sunday. We don't know, but the way it goes, my selection for this one, and I'm torn, and I'm going to get it wrong either way, but my selection for this one is, now I have a theory about lopsided statistics. It's called my theory of televised lopsided statistics. And here's how the theory goes. If a statistic which is incredibly lopsided is shown on TV during a sports broadcast, circumstances will immediately coalesce to create an exception to that statistic and to defy that statistic. So when I see TV announcers run the graphic that New England historically is 0-4 in playoff games against Denver, I'm going New England in this game. I'm going New England by a touchdown. I think the final is going to be around 27-20. I think Garrett Steedham will put together an acceptable performance, but I don't see him throwing for 350 yards and 4 scores or anything like that. I think what this is going to come down to is New England's, honestly, Drake May is doing okay. He's doing more than okay as a quarterback for New England, but I think this game is going to be won or lost on the ground. I do. There's a lot of focus on both of the quarterbacks, but I think the guys that get handed the ball to run it are going to be the determining factor in this game. And whichever team hits 100 yards rushing first, I think will win the game, which that's an easy prediction to make. You know what I mean? Because it means that you're possessing the ball for a longer time. The other defense is getting worn out more quickly. And that is a spiraling thing. It feeds on itself, because if you're holding the ball longer, their defense gets tired. They can't stop you as much, and so you hold the ball longer. But I'm going to go with New England. Like I said, 27-20. Take the over. It's at Denver, and they will not be experiencing the Snowmageddon, which will be our final topic of today's podcast. Denver can win this game. And again, it's going to come down to the running game. But I think New England will win this game. 27-20 is my pick. Next, NFC game, 6:30 Sunday evening Eastern Time. Los Angeles Rams are going to Seattle to take on their divisional rivals. They split their 2 games during the regular season, and the Rams outscored Seattle by a single point when you add up the points scored in those 2 games, and the Rams outgained Seattle by a single yard if you add up the points from these 2 games. So these teams are very evenly matched. But again, the stress is going to be on the home team's quarterback more than the visitor, I think, because Sam Darnold, the starting quarterback for Seattle, still has to prove himself a little bit in terms of how he does in the playoffs, because of how he's done in the playoffs in the past. Now, granted, he commanded that team to a convincing 41-6 blowout of the hated San Francisco 49ers last weekend in Seattle. But we'll see what he does against a team that has a better offense by and large, obviously, a better quarterback and more offensive weapons. Now, granted, your quarterback can't stop another team's offense. But we'll see what Seattle's defense can do. Seattle's defense is playing very good football. I'm not digging into statistics this week. I've read them. I've got a whole bunch of statistics here on my note document, but I'm not going to bury myself with it right now, because figures lie and liars figure. So I'm not going to go into that. I'm just going to go with my gut this week. I am going to go Seattle in this game. I think the Seattle defense is going to be the determining factor. It's how well they handle Matthew Stafford. He seemed to acquit himself tolerably in the second half of the game at Chicago last week, where the weather was miserable, it was cold, it was windy, it had snowed during the game. He's going to be in Seattle, and Seattle can be rainy and dreary and chilly, but it won't be Soldier Field in January. It won't be that bad. So no matter what the EC at start are going to be for the Los Angeles-Seattle game, I think that Stafford will acquit himself admirably, but I think as well that Seattle's defense is reminding me a lot of the defense they had when they won the Super Bowl a little over a decade ago. They had a defense that was called the Legion of Boom back then, and this defense evokes memories of them. So I'm going Seattle here. I'm going Seattle by 9 points. We're going to say 27-9, 27-18, 26-17. That's what we'll go with. We'll go Seattle 26-17. So I'm going New England by a touchdown and Seattle by 9. Seattle in this game, by the way, and this bears repeating, Seattle is only a 1.5 point favorite at home, and the over-under is 47.5. So they're expecting a little bit more scoring in this game than the AFC game. And Seattle, if this game was played on a neutral site, the way it's computed for the bookies, home field is worth 3 points for the home team. So in theory, if this game's played on a neutral site, the Rams are the favorite. If it's played in Seattle, the Rams are a particularly heavy favorite, because you're going to go from a 1.5 point dog to being a 4.5 point favorite, because Seattle isn't getting the 3 points and the Rams are. So that's 3 off one side and 3 added to another. Whereas if you're at a neutral site, you're just taking 3 points off Seattle's potential. So the difference there is double if the game is at LA. So LA would be a 4.5 point favorite if this game was played in LA. And while that does give me some pause and make me wonder if I'm making the right choice, I'm just going gut this week, and I'm going with Seattle. And now everybody enjoy while I go 0-2 and Denver and the Rams play each other in the Super Bowl. That's entirely possible. Any of the 4 potential outcomes, New England, Seattle, Denver, Seattle, New England, Los Angeles, Denver, Los Angeles, any of these games could happen. That could be Super Bowl 60 2 weeks from Sunday. It's entirely possible. But again, I'm going New England over Denver. This would be 2 games in a row where Denver, the top seed, is at home, and I did not pick Denver. So I might get this wrong twice in a row. And if I do, I might have to pick Denver to win the Super Bowl, because, I discounted them. But the Super Bowl is being played in San Francisco, so that might give an advantage to the NFC team, because they're those teams. Whereas New England, of course, is from the East Coast, and Denver is from the Mountain Time Zone. But anyway, that's who I'm going with. New England by a touchdown, Seattle by 9. Write it down. You heard it here first. So you can either laugh or celebrate with me as I find out if I'm right or I'm an idiot, if I even have electricity during the game, because this brings us to our final topic, Snowmageddon. SnowMyGod. Say it ain't snow, Joe. There's a storm coming, and it's about to hit. It's probably already begun to hit some of the areas in the central part of the U.S. Now, where it's hitting the central part of the U.S., I think, is a little bit further south of where the main stuff hits. But there are temperatures in the Dakotas right now that are dropping into double digits below 0 Fahrenheit. Okay, if you're negative 10 Celsius, it's 14 degrees Fahrenheit. If you're negative 10 Fahrenheit, it's over negative 20 Celsius. Just a hair over negative 20 Celsius. Now, just so you know, here's trivia for you. There is one temperature at which Celsius and Fahrenheit are the same number. Without looking, do you know, ask yourself, do you know what that temperature is? Where Celsius and Fahrenheit are the same number. And I'll give you the answer in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The correct answer is Celsius and Fahrenheit are the same temperature at negative 40 degrees. Negative 40 Celsius is negative 40 Fahrenheit. And there are wind chills in the Dakotas and in that area of the country that may get that low during the course of the next few days. But the bulk of the worst effects of the storm, because let's be honest, people in Wisconsin and Minnesota and North and South Dakota and Montana and Wyoming, are a little bit more inured to dealing with snow and bad road conditions, whereas us East Coast idiots and people in the South, the former Confederate states, don't handle snowfall well at all. I got a cousin that lives outside of Denver who also says that due to the influx of what his dad, my uncle, okay, it's my cousin, like I said, he calls them Californicators. People who emigrate to Colorado from California, who are these idiots that vote for crappy liberal policies that turn their state into a dump. So what do? They flee the state that their voting has ruined, go to a new state, and then proceed to vote for the same crappy liberal policies that turn their old state into a dump, and then turn their new state into one as well. It's happening in Montana. It's happened in Colorado. Colorado's already turned into a blue state. And it's happening in other places because people who vote Democrat are idiots who don't understand the repercussions of their own actions, because apparently, I don't know, maybe they weren't disciplined as children and they were never taught to understand what consequences are. But causal relationships and cause and effect do not really activate any synapses in the Democrat and liberal brain. They just don't. But we're talking about the weather, so before I get off on yet another freaking rant, let's talk about this. There's ice coming for a lot of the southern states. Tennessee, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Kentucky possibly, Louisiana, I think. These states in the South are all going to possibly be dealing with, really, they could be catastrophic amounts of ice. Okay, now in January of 1994, I was living in Graysonville, Maryland, and working in Cambridge, Maryland, and there was an ice storm that hit our region in the early afternoon on a Thursday. I want to say it was around January 30th, 1994. I was in Cambridge to pick up my paycheck from my job at 2 p.m. that day. Had to get to Graysonville, which was about a 45 minute drive, by 3 p.m. so I could deposit my paycheck before the bank closed. Well, I got my check, and it's about 7 or 8 minutes after 2 o'clock. I leave Cambridge. The ice storm hits as I'm driving to Graysonville. And I won't go into detail. That's another life story for anecdotal evidence. But I can tell you right now, during that trip, I was never as scared behind the wheel ever again. Not before, not since. It was the most harrowing, danger-fraught trip I ever took in a car, because people were flying off the road all around me. And I was white-knuckling that steering wheel the whole 30-plus miles from Cambridge through Easton up to Graysonville. And I can tell you, it was downright traumatic. It was awful. So when an ice storm hits, it can be just devastating. Plus, when the ice accumulates on power lines, it can pull them down. When it accumulates on trees near power lines, it can pull the trees down, and then the trees fall on the power lines, and either way, you're losing electricity. Well, we live in the country, and we're out there a ways. So there's a lot of power lines between us and where our power starts. Okay? And I'm very concerned that we're going to get some of that ice, and it could knock out power here. And everything we have in the house, I think, runs on electric. So if we lose electricity, we're in an unheated home, and we'd be better off crawling inside the refrigerator to stay warm at some point than we would be to stay in the house itself, because it could get that cold. Looking at the highs and lows for the week after this storm hits, which is supposed to happen late tomorrow evening. What's today? Today's the 23rd, so late in the evening of January 24th, it's supposed to start. Of course, what I'm seeing, it's really going to start in the early morning hours, Sunday the 25th. But in any event, it could be devastating in terms of what the ice does to states further south and west of us. And if it hits us, it could be devastating to us as well. We're not talking about a glazing of ice here. We're talking about possibly multiple inches of ice. Okay? And I've said it before, and because I learned it from wiser people who were right when they said it. I would rather have a foot of snow than a quarter inch of ice. Because you can still drive your car when there's a foot of snow on the road. You can still have some semblance of control over your vehicle when there's a foot of snow. When there's significant ice, a quarter inch, a half inch, a full inch of ice, buddy, I'm not driving my car across a frozen pond. You cannot control that. You simply can't. The only thing you can do there is put your car in gear and let the natural force created by it idling at low RPMs with the car in drive, moving forward at a couple miles an hour, is about as safe as you're going to get when you're driving on ice. Your brake pedal is useless if you're doing more than 4 or 5 miles an hour on ice. And then when you do try to brake, you have to do it in a certain way, because if you hit your brakes too hard, you're done. You're going in a skid, you're going off the road. And down here, the roads are a little twisty and curvy. So there's one road down here a few miles past our house called World's End, which is a very tight S-curve, and it's called World's End because that's what it was for some drivers. It was the end of the world for them because they didn't take the turn right, ended up in the marsh, and it's salt water, so their cars were totaled. They're ruined, and it could kill them because if you take, you know what it's like if you wreck a car, man. If you take a turn too fast, you're screwed, especially if you roll it upside down in the marsh. How are you going to get out? So I would rather have a foot of snow than a half inch of ice. And there was talk, and I have a screenshot of it, which I posted on Twitter, and I'll read you my tweet in a minute. The forecast at one point called for 11 to 13 inches of snow falling on Sunday. Just on Sunday. And for us to get a half an inch an hour on average in a 24-hour period is brutal. Okay? We get a foot of snow, the state is shut down, it's an apocalypse. Katie, bar the door. Hope you got toilet paper, bread, milk, and eggs, because apparently nobody can use anything else to cook a meal when they're snowbound, but we're not going to talk about that. The forecast was 11 to 13 inches here in Maryland, which would paralyze the region. Okay? If you're in... Okay, quick story. Back in 2015, my wife almost accepted a job in Casper, Wyoming, which is almost smack dab in the center of Wyoming. She ended up not taking the job, but we got to the point where we had begun to pack. And she just changed her mind, didn't sign the 3-year contract, and chose to stay at her position she had at the time, so we stayed in Maryland. But out of curiosity, I was looking around to see what kind of snowfall they got in Casper, as opposed to we were living at the time in Cambridge, Maryland. And the numbers were almost mirror opposites of one another. Cambridge, Maryland, on average, gets around 12 inches of total snow in a given winter, and during the course of a full calendar year, gets a little over 50 inches of rain. Conversely, Casper, Wyoming gets around 50 inches of snow in a given year and around 12 inches of rain. So the numbers are close enough to be almost exactly opposite. What's more is I found a color-coded map, and what the map showed was the continental U.S. with an outline showing, it broke down every state. You could pick out individual counties in every state. And it showed, color-coded, what amount of snow it usually took for counties in different states to close their schools. So how much snow did it take for Dorchester County, Maryland, where we were living at the time? On average, how much snow would it take to close schools there? It was 1 to 3 inches. 1 to 3 inches. Which, if you think about it, really isn't much. There are people in Buffalo would go 1 to 3 inches. I don't even leave for work 10 minutes early if there's 3 more inches of snow. All I do is I scrape off my windshield and I get my butt to work. You know, people that are used to it can handle it, but people here are not used to significant snow. We have had multiple winters in the last 10 years where we got almost none at all. We have had at least 2 winters in the last 10 years where we got no snow whatsoever. We've had at least 1 winter above and beyond that where we got less than 3 inches of snow. Okay, so snow is not a terribly common occurrence here. Our winters tend to be pretty mild. We can have a cold snap here and there, and we can have some snowfall here and there, but by and large, we don't get a foot of snow in one chunk. The winter of 2009 to 2010 was a notable exception because between the 1st of December and Valentine's Day, we had 4 blizzards, and just before Valentine's Day, over an 11-day period, we had 3 blizzards, and by blizzards, I mean 8 or more inches of snow, because that to us is a blizzard. We had a period at the end of January, because I was laid up with a broken fibula, okay, and couldn't dig my wife's car out for work. I was laid up with a broken fibula and had to sit in my recliner with my leg propped up over my head, watching the snowfall, unable to do anything about it. And during an 11-day period, like I said, we had 3 snowfalls of 8 inches or more. It was awful. It was the most snow, most times I saw significant snow in one winter of my life. There have been individual snowstorms, like in 1978, 79, I think they were, where we had massive hits, but they were one-off things. It wasn't 3 blizzards in 11 days. It wasn't a front, bang, 5 days later, a front, bang, 5 days later, another front, bang. So that said, bringing us back to the snow and the ice totals, it was 11 to 13 inches, and when I was on the phone with a friend this morning, now the snow forecast for our area, which is called basically the mid-shore, the central part of Maryland's eastern shore, east of Chesapeake Bay, they're calling right now for 4 to 5 inches, 1 inch or so of a wintry mix, and 0.4 inches of rain. So I can tell you right now, if the rain happens first, that's actually a good thing, because the snow that falls after the rain will melt when it makes contact with the rain that's already landed on the ground, the accumulations, the puddles, the wet ground. The snow won't stick. Now, when I see wintry mix of 1 inch, it doesn't say ice, but there might be some ice mixed in there. Because when I think wintry mix, I think of snain, which is a combination of snow and rain, or I think sleet, which when you're getting sleet, you're halfway to an ice storm. Okay, it's from snow to a little bit of rain. Basically, here it is. It's rain, it's snain, it's sleet, it's ice, it's snow. It's not necessarily in that order, but those are your 5 types of winter precipitation we get. And sleet can be bad because sleet will accumulate as a layer of ice on things. But that's what I'm kind of seeing happen. And if that is on top of 3 or 4 or 5 inches of snow, to be honest, it's better than being underneath it, because you can see it and you can better deal with it. But still, we've gone from an 11 to 13 inch prognostication to a 4 to 5 inch prognostication with more of a wintry mix, and now rain is being factored in. So I'm hoping that this mitigates what this storm can do and we don't lose power. Now, I can tell you this much: if there is no podcast on Monday the 26th, it will be because I have no electricity. And if I have no electricity and you don't see me post a podcast on Monday, please pray for us, because we might be in a bad situation. We might not be able to stay in our home. We might have to go somewhere for shelter. We might have to, oh God, the scenario could be that I end up at my mother-in-law's house. I don't think that's going to happen, but I don't know. I just don't know. If we lose electricity for more than a few hours, and I can tell you right now, if this storm knocks out power, we could go a week or more down here without electricity. It worries me. It really, really does. So I might update on Twix as the storm progresses, just to tell everyone what's up here and to gauge what's going on elsewhere. I'm going to keep an eye on Twix and see what's happening. But let's all pray that the ice doesn't happen. The snow is going to happen. Let's all pray that there isn't ice, because there are areas that won't get snow. They're going to get ice, and it could be awful. It could be devastating to some areas. It could cause a total systemic collapse. Okay, so I hope you guys. I used to watch the show Doomsday Prepper, and I've done Doomsday Preppers, and I've done a little bit of prepping, and I've got a little bit of stuff. But when you don't have a generator and you lose electricity, you got problems. Again, we don't have a gas stove. We don't have, anything but electrical power here, and it concerns me. It does. So let's hope that things end well in that regard. And speaking of ending well, we're approaching about, seems like the average time for this podcast of late. So we're going to wrap things up. And I want to thank you for listening. Pray for the people in Iran. Pray for the people in the South and along the East Coast and in the Midwest who are going to get bombed with snow. It could be really bad. But again, please follow my podcast. Please give me a 5-star rating. I'd like to think I'm doing a decent job here. I'm trying to be informative and interesting. Hopefully make you laugh once or twice. Leave a comment on my podcast. Answer the poll. I put up a poll every time. Please interact. I respond to all the reasonable comments. I'm behind on responding to the comments, but I will be. But again, unreasonable people and trolls, you can all get a life. You can listen to this podcast on Spotify, Amazon, Audible, iHeartRadio, and others. My email for story and discussion topic suggestions is wspdpod@gmail.com, wspdpod@gmail.com. Drop me a line. You can also donate to help us get better technology, and thanks to our one listener who's going to be providing us with basically a laptop upgrade. That means the world. And it will help us improve the quality as well as possibly the quantity of our output. It really is going to help. Because for one thing, I can move the manuscripts and the novels that I'm working on over to that, and it's going to have a better software suite, and I won't have to use a very basic word processing editor for the manuscripts. Plus, it's going to allow us to shoot videos that are better and to do more stuff on YouTube in particular. Again, the email is wspdpod@gmail.com. My Twitter handle is @the WSPD podcast. That's the same on YouTube. And on Patreon, we are patreon.com/WSPDragons. On Instagram, we are the WSPD pod. And if the storm isn't too bad on Sunday, then I might make a point to try to get out and take some pictures of what we have going on in the area. But if we get ice, folks, I make you no promises. I just pray we don't get ice. Snow, 4 or 5 inches of snow, I think we're okay. But ice changes the game. Anyway, thanks again for listening. Subscribe, spread the word, and help me entertain and annoy more people. This is Dave the Nerd Emperor wrapping things up. Again, sorry for the background noise from the heaters that are running, but it's cold, man. It's cold in here. And the temperatures starting Sunday are not going to get above freezing much at all for a week afterwards. So whatever does fall is going to stay a while, which will only make things worse. But anyway, thanks for listening. Have a great rest of your day. Pray for us. Pray for Iran. Pray for yourselves. Everybody needs it. We now need it more than ever. And tomorrow it'll be the same. So take care, and hopefully we'll talk again on Monday. Have a good weekend and enjoy the games. Bye-bye.